Hey guys, it's your boy, the Rican Nerd. Today I will be discussing my journey into the world of Assassin's Creed Origins as Bayekasiwa. As many know, the Assassin's Creed series went on a one-year hiatus to bring a soft reboot of sorts to the series, and in many ways, it delivered as promised, but leaves some to be desired. The world of Origins is very unique and is a breath of fresh air to a series that has. Assassin's Creed was a mess of a game, not technologically, though it had its fair share of bugs. Assassin's Creed was one of the most wash, rinse, and repeat games I have ever played. However, it was still a mostly compelling story. In Assassin's Creed, the bad guys are for the most part clearly bad, and the good guys appear like beacons of sunlight for most of the game. The story revolved around killing seemingly unconnected targets, one by one, and returning to your master for the next target. This starts a cycle of interrogation, eavesdropping, and fetch quests until you can attack each target. There was a twist in the end, and that was that. Assassin's Creed introduced us to our oldest assassin in the lineage, until recently that is. His name was Altair Ibn La Ahad, a brash, crass, and cocky master assassin with a penchant for disobeying the rules of his order. Altair gets punished and must take the journey of a new recruit, though it is odd that even though he is treated like a new recruit, he is sent to kill the heads of the Templar Order, the main chief antagonist for the main series. Altair was at best a bland, monotone character who was mostly devoid of emotion. The same 3 or 4 missions are repeated to death. Assassinations are anything but stealthy, and the progression from zero to hero was forced unnecessarily. Assassin's Creed also started the trend of the modern-day segments, featuring Desmond Miles, an assassin by birth who turned his back on his creed. The modern-day segments were used as a vessel to explain how the player is able to reenact the historical sections. Many players, including myself, felt this was completely unnecessary, as the historical parts were able to stand on their own. However, science fiction has always been ingrained in the Assassin's Creed series, such as the Isu, an ancient race of aliens who at one point inhabited Earth alongside humans, the Pieces of Eden, artifacts of great power that the Templars want to use to control the entire world. In the series, I would give this first installment a 6 out of 10 at best. Now we move on to Assassin's Creed 2. Assassin's Creed 2 was a game that is hard to top by most of today's games, but it was not without its own flaws. Assassin's Creed 2 introduced the Renaissance period, Italy. It showed us a flawed Leonardo da Vinci and the beginning of our protagonist, Ezio Auditore da Firenze. Ezio was charismatic, emotional, and compassionate. It was almost as if they looked at Altair and did the exact opposite for Ezio. In Assassin's Creed 2, you take the journey of seeing the birth of your protagonist and seeing him grow up. It endears you to him and makes you feel the emotions that he feels, such as loss, betrayal, love, and even more loss. Assassin's Creed 2 doubles down on the Assassins versus Templars and makes it personal by having them attack Ezio's personal life. Many twists, turns, and oddly enough, Leonardo being your gadget maker, and Ezio becomes the head of the Assassin Order. However, it does fall short for having a map so polluted with unnecessary collectibles that you can't take 3 steps without finding a chest or a feather. Assassin's Creed 2 gets an 8 out of 10 for its touching storyline and highly improved mechanics. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the high point of the series, until recently, showing Ezio recruit a new generation of assassins and making you feel like a true boss. The enemies become more and more personal, and the fights make you want to kill the enemy, not just beat the game, but to defeat the enemies of your new best friend Ezio. With all the highs, there are usually lows. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood brought with it tedious grinding to level up your recruits to a master assassin levels, as well as increasingly unwanted modern day segments, with Desmond becoming a bane to the fans. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood shows you what happened between Ezio and his lost long love, as well as showing you the story behind his enemies. Instead of them just telling you why they are bad guys, the game shows you the motivations behind the antagonists. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood also shows you the burden of leading, as he is torn between making a brotherhood strong enough to not need him and always having to keep one eye on his ever swelling ranks of enemies. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood also finishes off the lifelong enemies and ties off every loose end to his story. And I feel that is why a lot of fans felt like the third act of the trilogy was unnecessary. Still, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood takes you for a long, wild ride from beginning to end, and it ended on a very high note. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood gets a 9 out of 10 in my book. Assassin's Creed Revelation was the lowest point in the trilogy, but was still important to Ezio and his legacy. Assassin's Creed Revelation takes us to Constantinople, where Ezio is tracking down pieces of Eden. Along the way, he builds up a sub-chapter of his Brotherhood, and players are forced into tower defense games, which are disguised as the enemy trying to destroy your Brotherhood. Assassin's Creed Revelation also shows you the lives behind your underlings, and you can take loyalty missions in order to make certain assassins into ultimate assassins, giving them control over a sector to defend against attacks. Basically, it locks the area from being attacked ever again. Assassin's Creed Revelations also introduces the love interest and future wife of Ezio, and it shows the foundation of their relationship. Forgettable villains and a weak narrative give this end of an era game a 7 out of 10, only being held up by an aging Ezio and the memories he brought us. On a side note, we finish up the Ezio legacy with an animated movie titled Assassin's Creed Embers, as the almost decrepit Ezio tries to live his last few years in peace with his family. Xiao Yu, an assassin from China, begs Ezio to mentor her. Along the way, her pursuers attack the auditory villa, and Ezio teams up with Xiao in order to defeat them. At that point, he teaches her the way of the Creed. The film shows him winding down his life and shows you his final moments, closing out an eternal legacy that was Ezio the Mentore. The trilogy of Assassin's Creed 2, including Brotherhood, Revelations, and the movie Assassin's Creed Ember, takes you from Ezio's birth to his death. Along the way, they add some flashbacks that show Altair in a better light, making him feel important and showing his death as well. I feel like that was what made the Ezio trilogy so great. It took you for a long, winding ride, showing you a man who lost it all and go on to make a life for himself, showing you his love for his family, and showing the personal hatred for an otherwise unexplained foe. Assassin's Creed 3 takes us to the American Revolution and introduces us to one of the least liked protagonists, Raton Haketon, also known as Connor Kenway. Assassin's Creed 3 shows us how he was fathered, showed him as a young child, made to witness the death of his mother, and shows his revenge on the people who burned his village, who conveniently turned out to be Templars. In Assassin's Creed 3, the tensions between assassins and Templars was never more forced. Connor only took up arms because one Templar was drunk and burned the village. The head of the Templar Order, Haytham Kenway, yes, he is Connor's father. He had forbidden the Order from attacking the village, which housed his beloved and son, but there were no repercussions for the attack. In Assassin's Creed 3, you are made to believe that Connor had a hand in every major event of the American Revolution, including the Boston Tea Party and Paul Revere's ride. Assassin's Creed at best introduced us to naval combat and at worst locked away character leveling behind useless hunting and a mandatory trading slash outpost building mechanic. The character attempted to surpass Altair as the most bland of all time, and the story is as predictable as they come. The only awe-inspiring moment of the game comes from real historical events, and a plot twist so hard that it left players breathless just before introducing Connor. Assassin's Creed 3 also ended the saga of Desmond Miles, killing him off, as well as any true protagonist for the modern day segments for games to come. Assassin's Creed 3 hit a low point for the series and went by with a 5 out of 10. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was a new golden age for the series, symbolic for also taking place during the golden age of piracy. Assassin's Creed Black Flag introduced us to Edward Kenway, grandfather of Connor and father of Haytham, as well as an open-world naval section that took up 80% of the story and map. Assassin's Creed Black Flag took place in the Caribbean. The rum was plentiful, the women were easy, and the story was okay. Edward was not an assassin by any measure, and only ended up against the Templar Order because he betrayed them. Not their ideology, mind you. He betrayed them as a pirate would a civilized government official. The conflict was only due to his being a pirate, which is not a bad thing as it reminded us of the good Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But it is not the story of an assassin. Assassin's Creed Black Flag introduced Abstergo Entertainment, a video game company, and used it as a vessel to show us the historical sections. Even more pointless, unnecessary, and unwanted than Desmond Miles, they killed him off to introduce an even worse modern-day section where you control a first-person, unnamed employee tasked with sifting through Edward's memories in order to make trailers for a fake pirate game that the company is making. That in itself is a guise for finding out who the sage is, an apparently never before seen reincarnating cycle of a half-human, half-Isu who was maybe married to Juno, who really knows. The plotline seemed to be abandoned a few games later, along with Juno trying to take over the Earth. Assassin's Creed Black Flag did stand above many of its predecessors with its unique world, atmosphere, and scenery. However, a lack of compelling hero, lackluster story, and useless modern-day segments lowered the quality of this otherwise perfect game to an 8 out of 10. Assassin's Creed Unity was nothing short of a franchise killer. Assassin's Creed Unity put us in the French Revolution, in the shoes of Arnaud Victor Dorian. Unity was riddled with bugs, useless multiplayer, unlikable protagonists, an enemy who wasn't even really the enemy, and even worse modern-day segments. Unity deflated all the momentum that Black Flag had garnered, and many will say that it caused irreparable damage to the Assassin's Creed franchise. Unity does have a mostly good story, showing the original Templars as good men of God before being betrayed from within into what became the Templar Order of the franchise. Arno and Elise have chemistry, but even that is hindered by the pure Romeo and Juliet vibes of the story. Unity, just like Assassin's Creed 3, flounders because it leans too heavily on history, most of which has been learned or shown way better by other mediums, such as Les Mis. And the original parts, if they can be called that, are once again the protagonists fighting the Templars, not because the Creed demands it, but because Elise's father is the Grand Master of the Templars, and he is attempting to rehabilitate them, though the modern-day segments clearly spoil the fact that he will not achieve his goal. However, Assassin's Creed Unity would go to garner the worst ratings in franchise history, and we here at the Recon Nerd give it a 4 out of 10. Assassin's Creed Syndicate was a great game that only achieved enough to be called life support to a dying franchise. The Industrial Revolution of England. The story, the assassin twins Jacob and Evie Fry were great choices, but the game came one game too late. The Fry twins were lovable heroes, born assassins who were respected their roots and kept each other in check. They grew a gang of bruisers and cutthroats instead of a true brotherhood. They dined with queens and hung out with the poor. They were loved by all, in many cases even by their enemies. And they always had good comebacks when they were talking smack to people. The story beats are mostly original and are elevated by the fact that you can switch between the twins, though they are mostly the same in terms of fighting style. They do have unique abilities that show them as masters of their personal disciples once you get to higher ranked levels. Jacob can become a dispatcher of men, mowing through enemies with ease and with enough weaponry to be a one-man army. Evie, on the other hand, can become one with the shadow. She embodies the true creed. She can become a chameleon that can never be found while remaining still. She also masters all silent weapons and moves with grace and agility. The main villain is compelling for the most part. The battle against him made great, but imperfect due to technological limits, forcing you to basically load when you were forced to switch between the twins during the final boss fight. Love was also a heavy topic, with Evie falling for a fellow assassin from a separate assassin cell, and Jacob seemingly falling for one foe who dies at his hands. The low point, other than the modern day segments of course, was the traversal system. The game was set in a civilization so advanced that they ended up being equipped more like Batman and less like assassins, which may sound cool, but that is why we have the beautiful Arkham game series. Assassin's Creed Syndicate came at both the worst time and the best time. It was sacrificed to scrutiny and hatred from those who gave up on the series and wrote it off as a bad game. However, it does deserve more praise and earns a 7.5 out of 10. That brings us to Assassin's Creed Origins. Assassin's Creed Origins introduces us to Bayek of Siwa. Bayek is, or at least was, a Magi, a protector to the Egyptian way of life. A love letter to the fans of the franchise. Assassin's Creed Origins has an amazing story that leans lightly on history, even taking some liberties with the fact that there is little recorded history of the time period, but a lot of culture and knowledge of how life was during that time. The map is vast, I believe even the largest in the franchise, if not about the same size as Black Flag, but it swapped water for sand and cities that do not require loading screens. Assassin's Creed Origins also introduced Aya, the wife of Bayek, who was the first true assassin, as Bayek is interested only in avenging his loss, whereas Aya is interested in liberating the people from corruption. Many may feel as if they would have preferred to play as Aya due to her moving, fighting style, and acting like an assassin. And Bayek is loud, crass, and fights like an Abrams tank. Every attack from him feels a little too serious to the point he feels like an anime character that can slice through buildings in half. Bayek, though, proves the detractors wrong once you give him a chance. He is a good man with a good heart that is being consumed by vengeance, but even that can be forgiven because he sees it in himself. And in the end, he does let go of anger to create the creed we all love alongside Aya. Assassin's Creed Origins is filled with love, betrayal, and hatred. Some of the plot twists are easy to miss due to the game's infatuation with padding the story so it does not stagnate. But regardless, it is a great story. Assassin's Creed Origins does a good job showing Bayek as not an assassin because he becomes what is meant to be an assassin along the way. He did not have a mentor or the history of the creed to lean on. He is the last of the Magi. He is the first of the assassin. He is the servant of Amun, the Egyptian god of death. In its attempt to be a game that does not give you enough time to be bored, Assassin's Creed Origins moves you at breakneck speed for an hour or so. Before you know it, 5 targets are dead. They keep being mentioned, and you meet people from when Bayek was a Magi, but the player never got to see him before the conflict. The game would have been served 100 times, maybe even 1,000 times better, by being set 2 years before its start time, showing Bayek as a father, his allies, the other Magi's, the death of the pharaoh that led to these conflicts, and the targets he killed before the player starts playing. It almost feels as if it was cut to be sold later, much like in Brotherhood's Battle of Forli and Bonfire of the Vanities, that were explained as corrupted segments in the code to be unlocked by either buying the season pass or buying them separately. This does not take away from the gorgeous visuals, stunning environment, lovable main character, as well as his relationships with his friends and loved ones, twists, turns, and a heck of a lot of stabbing. The game does a great job at showing emotion and never lets up. And it must be mentioned that the modern day segments weren't too bad. They showed up a new protagonist. She becomes infatuated with Aya and Bayek, and by the end, you can see her character development can be something that may even be better than what Desmond Miles was. And for all that, it earns a 9 out of 10. The only thing preventing a perfect score is those missing segments and some minor glitches that can be forgiven here and there. So that was my deep dive into the world, story, and characters of the mainline Assassin's Creed series. Of course, there's a bunch of media including side story games, movies, comics, and I believe even some more anime. But here at the Recon Nerd, we're focusing on the main games. So drop a comment, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And keep an eye out, because I will be doing a ton of more stuff like this in the future. And I'll see you guys next time on the Recon Nerd. Peace.